Hi guys, Michael Abayomi here. So Gamescom 2024 is currently going on over at Cologne, Germany, and we just had the opening night live ceremony. And as can be expected, a lot of new games were revealed. We got an extended look at the new Call of Duty, as well as release dates for the likes of Indiana Jones. So it was more or less your average showcase. But out of all the games that were covered during the events, there were two in particular that I would like to discuss in this video. And I'm sure, as you can guess from the title, the games in question are Little Nightmares 3 and the new Tarsier Studios IP, Reanimal. So heading into 2024, my most anticipated game for the year was Little Nightmares 3. And this was based on how much of a fan I'd become of the series. In fact, I've had my eye on the series ever since the first game was first announced as Hunger way back then in 2014. And one of the things that really attracted me to the game was its visuals. It had this very detailed, toyetic look that was just unlike anything you'd seen back then. And even up to now, if you go back and you look at those original trailers, you can see that most of that still holds up and most of that still made its way into the final game. Like, they were able to maintain that level of quality, the rendering, the lighting, all of that was on full display in the final game. But strangely enough, when the game eventually came out in 2017, I didn't actually warm up to it the way I thought I was going to. And in retrospect, I guess this was due to the fact that it was coming out in the wake of the phenomenal Inside, which was my favorite game for 2016. Because Inside more or less had raised the bar for what all these cinematic platformers and all these 2D side-scrolling games could be, what they could look like and what they could accomplish with their environmental storytelling. So Inside was just on another level. Little Nightmares, by comparison, I felt it didn't really capture that same thrill that I had from the very first moments of Inside. But eventually I would go back to Little Nightmares after rediscovering that it actually had a lot to offer too. Like the fact that it was played from a 2.5D perspective, giving all the puzzles an added dimension, and just the whole general vibe of the game. How well realized the setting was, and all the various characters and monsters that inhabited its world, which pretty much allowed the game to live up to its title. And of course, all this will carry over to the second game, Little Nightmares 2, which I felt was even better than the first one. So much so that it eventually became one of my favorite games for 2021. But between that game's release and now, a lot of things have happened behind the scenes. Most notably is the fact that Tarsier Studios, the development team behind the game, had been acquired by Embracer Group, while the IP itself, Little Nightmares, was being retained by publishers Bandai Namco, which explains why Little Nightmares 3 is being developed by Supermassive Games. And while I was initially disappointed by that development, we have to keep in mind that Supermassive Games themselves also have a lot of experience within the horror genre, because they worked on games like Until Dawn, and they've shown that they are able to craft all these story-driven narratives as well. So I'm actually curious to see how they put their own spin on the Little Nightmares IP. From everything we saw from the first trailers, it was enough for it to become my most anticipated game, which was why I was greatly disappointed to find out that the game was being quietly delayed and moved into 2025, which pretty much left a huge hole in my gaming calendar for the year, which I am still struggling to fill even as we speak. But in the midst of all that so-called sadness came the announcement that Tarsier Studios had actually been hard at work on their next IP, and they were gearing up to reveal it during the forthcoming Gamescom opening night live presentation. And while that teaser itself had been kind of cryptic, not really giving us much to go by, you could already tell from the general look of it that it was going to be something in the same vein of Little Nightmares. But boy, did I not know how strikingly similar the game was going to turn out to be, as we finally got our first full look at the game, which is titled Reanimal, and it bears more than just a striking similarity to Little Nightmares. Like, if nobody had told me what the game was called, or that it was being developed by Tarsier Studios, just by glancing at the game, you would have thought you were looking at another game in the Little Nightmares IP, which is not a bad thing at all, because like I've said and established already, I'm a very big fan of Little Nightmares. So the more video games we'll have in this vein, the better. But just seeing this game, the way it was revealed, everything that was shown during the gameplay teaser, you could tell that it had a very strong focus on co-op, which is kind of ironic and coincidental when you look at the fact that Little Nightmares 3 itself is equally going to have a strong tilt towards cooperative play, which was something that was never done for the previous games in the series, and it was supposed to be like this new selling point. So I'm just happy and elated by the fact that we have these two games that look quite similar and probably are going to play quite similar, but are being developed by two different development teams. And while Reanimal didn't get a release date along with the review trailer, something tells me that we might actually get it as early as 2025, which would just make 2025 like one of the best years in terms of horror video games or horror themed video games. Like having both Little Nightmares 3 and Reanimal in 1 year. It remains to be seen if this is how it's going to play out, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed that both these games come out and deliver to their full potential. Anyway, these are just my thoughts about the Reanimal and Little Nightmares 3. Which of the two games are you looking forward to the most, or are you eager to get your hands on both of them? Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed watching this discussion, and to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on if you'd like to see more discussions like this in the future. And until the next one, this is Michael, signing off.